Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Dhanavallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodhanandana Bhajananarandana. Yasodhanandana Bhajananarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Kadamba Shri Vasani Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Amrita Koti Vaishnava ki jai. Can you give me some of the green stuff? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Which verse? What is the verse number today? Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 22, The Marriage of Kadamba Muni and Devahuti, Text 32. Yeah. Barhismatim namavibur Yam nirvisya samavasad Tasyam pravista bhavanam tapatraya vinashanam Barismatim namavibur Yam nirvisya samavasad Tasyam pravista bhavanam tapatraya vinashanam Barismatim namavibur Yam nirvisya samavasad Tasyam pravista bhavanam tapatraya vinashanam Ladies. Pleasing. Barhismatin, the city Barhismati. Nama, named. Vibhu, the very powerful Swayambhuvamana. Yam, which. Nirvisya, having entered. Samavasat, he lived in previously. Tasyam, in that city. Pravista, entered. Bhavanam, the palace. Tapatraya, the threefold miseries. Vinasanam, destroying. Translation. Having entered the city of Barismati, in which he had previously lived, Manu entered his palace, which was filled with an atmosphere that eradicated the three miseries of material existence. Purport. The material world or material existential life is filled with threefold miseries. Miseries pertaining to the body and mind, miseries pertaining to natural disturbances, and miseries inflicted by other living entities. Human society is meant to create a spiritual atmosphere by spreading the spirit of Krishna consciousness. The miseries of material existence cannot affect the status of Krishna consciousness. It is not that the miseries of the material world completely vanish when one takes to Krishna consciousness, but for one who is Krishna conscious, the miseries of material existence have no effect. We cannot stop the miseries of the material atmosphere, but Krishna consciousness is the antiseptic method to protect us from being affected by the miseries of material existence. For a Krishna conscious person, both living in heaven and living in hell are equal. How Swayambhuva Manu created an atmosphere wherein he was not affected by material miseries is explained in the following verses. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyanandana Salakaya Saksurunminitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, in this material world, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Dukkhalayam asasvatam. In this material world, we are living in a temporary situation where we are always afflicted by various types of miseries, Janma Mritya Jara Vyadi, arising from birth, from death, from disease, and from old age and disease. And these things are the elements of material life. And somehow or other we see that Swayambhuva Manu was not afflicted by these material influences. So it is interesting how it was possible that he was not afflicted by all this material energy. And all this, it is mentioned, and that this is explained in the following verses. So naturally, my curiosity could not be contained. I had a quick look, and what was it? And we see very clearly, it is mentioned that, and early in the morning, every day, he used to listen to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a loving heart. So that simple process of hearing the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead shifts our consciousness to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and shifts our consciousness to be very thirsty. It said our thirst to hear such transcendental descriptions will just increase and increase. And as our thirst is increasing, the thirst for material things is decreasing. The asat trishna. The asat trishna is thirsting for the temporary. And as we are thirsting for the temporary, we are experiencing so much material misery, because each time everything material has these miseries attached to it in some form or other. It may not initially seem to be so, but it is so. So many examples, and one example that sort of vividly remained in my mind is, once I was traveling with a group of devotees in Europe towards the north on a tour, a bus tour. And the organizer, as we're going towards the direction Antarctic, the organizer was showing appropriate videos of penguins and all these other Antarctic animals, polar bears and whatever. At one point, we see how the emperor penguins, they're very big, how the females lay eggs on the ice, and the females sit on the eggs. Then the winter comes, the 6 months dark winter with 70 minus degrees temperatures and ice cold winds. The ladies are going to the south. It takes a man to sit on those eggs. And all through the cold winter, the men sit on the eggs. And then at the end of the winter, those men, they abandon the eggs and go south. And the first rays of sunshine appear and start to shine on those eggs. And there's hundreds of them lying on the ice. And then you see cracks appearing. And the little penguins come out and stand on the ice with their flat feet, and which are almost like natural skis. And the ice is sloping towards the sea, and within moments they are expert skiers, and they're going down the hill and just like all over the edge, and just a whole cloud of little penguins like flying towards the water. And then from the water this gaping mouth of a killer whale appears, and he swallowed all my penguins. I'm still not over it. It was too much. It was just like at the peak of their enjoyment. They got swallowed by this killer whale, the demon. Oh, it was just too much. It illustrates the material energy. It is somehow or other, sooner or later, There they are again, the tapatrayas, the threefold miseries. Miseries from mind, body, miseries from other living beings, miseries from natural circumstances. What are we going to do? Can't escape it. It's not possible. So, and yet a Vaishnava is not affected. Srila Prabhupada is making it clear. We cannot stop the miseries of the material atmosphere. That is not possible. But in consciousness, we can rise above. In the introduction to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada describes how Krishna consciousness is like going up in a plane. And as we are going up in the plane, we're looking down, and houses look like matchbox, and cars like toy cars. Everything becomes small. So the material things become insignificant. No big deal. Prabhupada used to say, we are tolerant. We are tolerant, somehow or other. We tolerate the discomfort of material existence. We're not going to dwell on it. We're not going to meditate on it. Our hopes are not there, not invested in the material energy. They're not, oh, I hope that everything is going to be really fine. No, we know some things are going to be fine and some things are going to be not so fine. And what can be done about that? Tolerate it, roll with it. There are rough moments. And of course, these rough moments are also not easy for a devotee. When one goes through severe disease, it's no fun. It doesn't matter whether you are Krishna conscious or not. It's intense, very intense. But that is material existence. We're going to get our share. And of course, one can try and cushion the material world with endless painkillers and so on, with endless ways of trying to soften the onslaughts of material existence. And sometimes we may have to make some arrangements, but that doesn't really help. But when we are taking shelter of Krishna and just somehow or other pray to Krishna, keep on chanting Hare Krishna under all conditions, that is where we get our inner strength. That is where we are untouchable. That is where there is a core within us. It is said, Hridaya Kandare Vosachinandana. Within the innermost chambers of the heart, there must be the Supreme Lord, Sachinandana, or Lord Krishna. So in these innermost core of the heart, yes, there is Krishna. I very much like this metaphor of looking at the heart as a house or as a big mansion with many rooms, and have the innermost core of the heart. And there must be Krishna. Sometimes in the outer rooms we have to deal with the material energy. And Prabhupada would say that he looked for some relief of his headache. And we just think, Prabhupada headache? Wasn't he transcendental? No, Prabhupada was taking a headache to manage this movement. And it is a burden. So many problems, so many things to deal with. Just so much energy spent on dealing with the material energy for a spiritual purpose. Moving this difficult material energy for the sake of pushing on Krishna consciousness in the material world is a headache. It's a headache. Who would desire such a thing? To just simply spend one's time relishing. Vayam tu navitripyama uttama sloka vikrame yat srinvatam rasa jnanam swadu pade swadu, to relish swadu pade at every step. That is a devotee's business. In that what is the verse now? A little foggy this morning in my head. What to do? Adhyatmika klesh. Oh yeah. Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam. So it says we must drink the Bhagavatam through the ears in rasam alayam and taste this transcendental these transcendental mellows. Then Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary is saying this word laya, rasamalayam, this word laya refers to one of these symptoms of ecstasy, namely laya, fainting. He says, so one should hear the Bhagavatam until one faints. Yes, one should just get so absorbed in hearing the Bhagavatam and tasting and relishing the ecstasy that one faints. And then Srila Vishwanath says, but then we can no longer hear the Bhagavatam. But then when we return to our external senses, we should hear the Bhagavatam again. Like this, he's emphasizing this with that description. How much we should just get absorbed. Not only like a religious exercise. It is our duty. It is our religious duty to every day hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Not like that. It is about absorption. It is about relishing. It is about appreciating the depth of this transcendental knowledge. The refinement. The refinement of sentiments. The refinement of culture. It is so nice to see in this description of the pastime as we are progressing towards the marriage of Kadamba Muni and Devahuti. It is so nice to see the entire culture that exists around this particular pastimes, with the personalities who are involved. Swayambhuva Manu, what a personality! What a saintly person! And now we're seeing how he is a saintly person by hearing, by regular hearing about the pastimes of the Supreme Lord and glorifying the Supreme Lord, worshipping the Supreme Lord, and by making every act an act of worship. Not only when we wave the incense at the Supreme Lord, that is an act of worship, but every step, every move is an act of worship. Nothing that we do is not an act of devotional service, because everything is linked. Srila Prabhupada gives the example that a boy who falls in love with a girl and wants to buy a beautiful ring for this girl, it costs an arm and a leg. He has to spend a whole week's salary on that ring. And in this way, his whole week of work becomes connected to that ring. The whole week he worked for the ring. In the same way, if we take the fruits of our labor and offer them to Krishna, then all our labor is connected with Krishna, and it's all for Krishna. And in this way, we can somehow or other go through life, and whether we are worshipping Krishna directly, by doing puja, or chanting kirtan, or whether we worship him indirectly by working with the material energy. But whatever we do with the material energy, the fruits are offered to Krishna. And so, then every single activity uplifts us, and every single activity increases. Not only increases our spiritual credit, neha vikramanasasti pratyavaya navijate, not only increases the credit in our spiritual bank balance, but also increases our attachment to Krishna. And as our attachment to Krishna is increasing, our desire to hear about Krishna is increasing. Matchita matgata pranabodhayantas parastapa tushyanti cha ramanti cha. That we are developing this, it gives us great satisfaction, it gives us enjoyment. So, in this way, it is by that taste, by that actual taste, that relishing in spiritual life, that we can rise above material suffering. And that material suffering becomes smaller and more insignificant. Param drista nivartate. It is simply by that superior taste that it is possible to rise above. And that is how it works. And so, devotional service is always full of transcendental mellow. So as I said, we see the devotional culture and we see the devotional interaction. We see how we have discussed how the king came and met Kadamba Muni. We see how their interaction took place of mutual respect. Recently we discussed how the king returned to his city, to the palace, and how the citizens actually were overjoyed to receive him. And we see that there are all kinds of emotions involved. It is relishable, overjoyed. So this is Vaishnava community. That within the Vaishnava community, we are all living with transcendental mercy every moment, and it is available. It is available, and it comes to us irregardless. Once we are in this sangha, in this association of devotees, then transcendental mercy comes in so many ways. In so many ways. Someone throws water on you, and someone makes you smell a flower, and there is prasadam. Then you meet a devotee who shares something of spiritual depth. There are the scriptures. Just like our Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying that one should dig deep in the mines of the scripture and collect jewels from the mines of the scriptures. And yes, we collect such jewels, share such jewels, and all these things, they nourish us. They nourish us. And of course, one can be passive and just wait for what comes, or one can be active and participate. One can, it is stated like that the example is given, the descent of the Ganga. And as the Ganges is descending into the universe, the demigods, they get actively involved. And it's very interesting. The demigods, they are, as the Ganga falls through the crack made by Lord Vamana and comes down, the demigods are fully aware of what is happening. They know the potency of the Ganga. They understand it's a drop of water that came from the causal ocean to begin with, and then washed the lotus feet of the Lord and became reddish from the kumkum of the lotus toe of Lord Vamanadev. And they know the potency of that water. So they are very jubilant. I mean, they are very happy to see this transcendental influence, and they have these big kumbhas, and they catch the water, and in these kumbhas, and carry it, and kumbhas means pots, and they carry it in these containers on their head and bring it down further into the universe. Then when they get to sort of the borders of their domain, they empty out the pots and sort of throw the water down. What on earth are they doing? Right? I mean, it was falling down anyway. It was falling down already. What was the point of catching it in pots and then bringing it down with so much work and then throwing it down anyway? If they would have just let it go, it would have fallen down. Doesn't make sense to me. No, the demigods, they understood. This is the mercy of the Lord. And when we are catching this mercy of the Lord, and when we become carriers of this mercy of the Lord, then we are becoming active distributors of the mercy of the Lord. And in this way, we get more benefit of the mercy of the Lord. Then the Ganga comes down to this planet, and up to the day of today, many people are gathering on the banks of the Ganga to take their bath and to take advantage of the purifying potency of the water. Still, the biggest gathering in the world, the biggest gathering of people in the world is still the Kumbh Mela. There is no bigger gathering of human beings on earth than the Kumbh Mela. So that is very interesting. That is very interesting. That still so many people are looking for purification from the Ganga. Then Ganga goes down further into the universe as the Bhagavati and reaches also the lower planetary systems. And there, nobody even knows. Nobody even knows that what Ganga is. They have no idea. They don't know it's a holy river. But somehow or other, they get purified anyway. So in the same way, we can relate to the mercy. We can actively relate to the mercy, collect it, and become an active via media of the mercy, like the demigods and their kumbhas, and we get more benefit. Or we can just, on a lower step of relating to the mercy, take advantage of it ourselves as much as we do. And on the lowest rung of the mercy, we don't even know that it is mercy, but we're getting it anyway. And of course, we are relating to to mercy in all these three ways. Because we don't know. We don't even know what hit us, so to speak. For example, sometimes we hear the glorification of Srila Prabhupada, and we can sit for hours and glorify Srila Prabhupada. In Vrindavan every year, large functions, and we hear so much from Prabhupada's disciples and followers in glorification of Srila Prabhupada. And yet, when you sit there and you hear so much detail, and intelligent detail, and detail that was experienced by Prabhupada's close associates. Like I remember the last time Guru Kripa Prabhu was just saying, he said, it was just, he appeared just like lightning. He said, so sudden, with so much force and so much potency. And then he was gone. And it really was like powerful. It was a powerful image. It was like penetrating Guru Kripa's vision, like experience that intense association of Prabhupada, and then so short actually, right? And then so many years of looking back at that short time that Srila Prabhupada was personally present. So it touched me when he spoke, and so many others share so many things. But even when we hear all the glorification about Srila Prabhupada, all the memories, we know that all that we hear about is just the tip of the iceberg. That Prabhupada is much greater than anything we can say or anything we can understand. Vaishnavira kriya vikyana bhujaya. We cannot understand the greatness of the superior Vaishnava. So we see only the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more. So much more. And Prabhupada is doing so much more. He's still doing so much now. One of my favorite letters of Srila Prabhupada, two letters actually, and one is where he describes about his spiritual master, and he says, my spiritual master has now returned to the spiritual world in his original Manjari Swarup, in his original form as a Manjari, and an associate of Krishna in the form of a gopi. All right, and then a little later, some weeks later, Prabhupada writes a second letter, and in the second letter he writes, now that my spiritual master has returned to his original Swarup, I know that he is still seeing everything that we do. I thought, wow, this is something. This is not only a description. The spiritual master during his lifetime is present in Vapu and Vani, his personal presence, and then in his word, in his instruction, and then after he lives forever in his instructions, in his words. So now Prabhupada lives on in his Vani, but Prabhupada gave in that letter some other indication that his spiritual master was still directly involved with everything that he was doing. And then when I read that, I said, well, in that case, I'm quite sure that Prabhupada is also directly involved with everything we are doing. And of course, we sometimes get some confirmations like that, where Srila Prabhupada seems to communicate, he appears either in a dream or whatever, and is actually communicating with devotees. I will not tell a whole story about that now. But that is amazing. So we cannot know how far the mercy is happening. Some people believe in guardian angels. Right? They believe in guardian angels, that everyone has his angel, and said, well, we do have our angels. We do have our angels. We have all these pure devotees. All these pure devotees who are our well-wishers and who are still glancing upon us. Right? How can we imagine the extent of the mercy? We have no idea. Tamal Krishna Maharaj wrote a beautiful short essay about how Lord Chaitanya was concerned. Lord Chaitanya was concerned about the progress of his movement. I was thinking, like, I mean, every town and village, but it's not really taking off. Look at what's happening. And so he describes some sort of meeting with the acharyas, and there's the whole parampara acharyas, the principal acharyas are there in the discussion. And at one point, it said so, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, yes, what about this mission? And then Bhaktisiddhanta is pointing out that there is no cause of anxiety, because his disciple will do everything. And he describes it in this way. And it's like a little play almost. And then we see how all these and then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta begins to explain how all the acharyas have empowered Prabhupada in different ways. How they've all given him a gift, a great gift. A gift of each brought their contribution. All the acharyas. I mean, I haven't, I could on my own make a list of what that contribution was. I can't remember it verbatim of what Tamal Krishna Maharaj wrote, but he did it very well because he was very scholarly. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj nicely presented the contributions of each acharya. Baladev Vichapushan, Govinda Bhasya wrote the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, for example. And each acharya his contribution, and he nicely presented how they all gave their gifts to Prabhupada. And how Prabhupada, armed with all that, went and started to distribute the mercy. And we see it, we read the purports, and we know it's not just Prabhupada alone. We know that Prabhupada was sitting at his desk at night, and with in front of him a big book with all the commentaries of the acharyas, and that we know that as he was writing his purports, as he was consulting and looking, and that this was going on, that as they were traveling, these books were in the suitcase, and the servant would set up the mic, the dictaphone for Prabhupada's translation, and the relevant books on the table. And that in this way Prabhupada brings us indeed all that mercy. Little by little we find out more and more, and there's no limit to it. There is no limit. There's no limit. Lord Chaitanya himself, Srimati Radharani herself, they're all glancing upon us directly. One thing in the Bhagavatam which also is really an impressive point is Sukadev Goswami. And that Sukadev Goswami became empowered by knowing what goes on in the mind of others. Narada Muni knows what goes in. He can be omniscient, practically speaking. Omniscient, knowing what goes on in the minds of every living being. And that is why he always appears at the right moment. Yeah? There he is when Dhruva needs it. There he is when Kamsa needs an instruction. Narada is always a good timing, because he knows. How is it possible that any living being can become even omniscient? But we see that it is possible. So all these personalities are there actively as our well-wishers. How can we imagine the extent of the mercy that surrounds us? Well, when I reflect on these things, then I'm just amazed reading this section of the Bhagavatam and seeing this amazing spiritual culture, an ocean of mercy being revealed to us here. This Srimad Bhagavatam is an ocean of mercy, an ocean of nectar. Vayam tu navitripyama uttamaslok et simvatam rasa jnanam svadu svadu pade pade. One should know rasa jnanam, one should develop knowledge of all these tastes. One should hear like this. I shared some thoughts with you this morning and would be very happy to hear again from Maharaj, because it's really so nice to have these discussions. It's a great opulence.
Baladev, Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan, after he concluded his Bhagavad Gita commentary, sometime after, he said that I was living there at Radhakund, and the devotees asked me, could I please write a commentary on Bhagavad Gita? And I thought, well, I could, but I'm here at Radhakund, and it's, you know, it's all Radha and Krishna and like that. And Bhagavad Gita, it's very philosophical, it's kind of introductory or something like that. So I felt, well, I don't really want to do it. But then the devotees kept asking me, and I decided, all right then, let me do it. The devotees want. So then he says, so I started. And when I started, it was like Krishna put me on a boat and pushed me out into the ocean of Bhagavad Gita. And I was traveling out on the boat, but suddenly the boat started sinking into the ocean of Bhagavad Gita. And then the boat went down and it became like a submarine. And I was going down and down and down into the ocean of Bhagavad Gita. And as I was going down, I was discovering more and more jewels in the meanings. And now I've finished, and I don't want to come out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, and I mean, I was just, it reminded me of how in Delhi, the deities were called Radha Parthasarathi. And, you know, in 1975, Harisori writes about it in his diary, that in 1975 this topic came up. Later in the 90s, the topic came up again. Yeah? And so from how is this possible? This is rasabas. This is mixing of rasas. Here is Parthasarathi, the chariot driver of Krishna, of Arjuna, sorry. And that is another ras than Radha. And, you know, why Radha Parthasarathi? It should just be either Parthasarathi or Radha Krishna, whatever, but how can you mix the two? Huh? But Prabhupada's answer simply was, he said, no. It is Radha Parthasarathi. Because even in Kurukshetra, Krishna is always meditating on Srimati Radharani. So she's also there. And when you hear that, it's like whoa, what an understanding of the Bhagavad Gita here. Right? Just in that name, Prabhupada displayed, I mean, another dimension. And scholars have argued, that cannot be, how is it possible? But not seeing the depth of you know, that Baladev Vijayabhushan saw, that Prabhupada saw, like that. Oh. Wonderful. Any other? Yes, Sarup Damodar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, thank you for the nice class. I especially like that poem you related about from Tamal Krishna Maharaj, the meeting of the Acharyas. And I also remembered that in Prabhupada's time, Tamal Krishna Maharaj had an operation in Bombay. And Prabhupada wanted to stop it, but wasn't in time to stop the operation, he felt. Rather, he has the operation in the West, but not in India. So he got there late, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj was just coming out of the anesthesia, and he saw Prabhupada in the room, and he said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I was dreaming about you." And he explained the dream, that in the dream, you were giving a report to the previous acharyas, how it's going, you're preaching in the West. And you were telling the previous acharyas that actually it's very difficult, because these people, they have no qualification. There's really no hope. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But one thing I realized is that all these people, they're very attached to my lotus feet, and therefore that will be their saving grace. So this is what Tamal Krishna Maharaj was dreaming, and he asked Prabhupada, "Is this true?" And Prabhupada very humbly said, "Yes, it is true." So just by being attached to Prabhupada, and his mission and his kindness, we can be saved.
Yeah. Very nice. I saw your hand, Maharaj. And the other Maharaj, if he has a comment, he's also welcome.
I don't know if you're familiar with Lalita Madhava.
Yeah, also
The
like that.
conclusion, the actual end. It's a long story, but Krishna marries, Radharani in Dwarika, and he says, "My dear, I'll give you, I think, 3 wishes. Tell me what you would like." So she gives two wishes, I think, as I remember. Then she gives one, the last one, that you and I will always enjoy our pastimes in Vrindavan. And Krishna says yes. And Radharani says, "But how is it possible? We're in Dwarika." And Ekanamsa suddenly comes in, Yoga Maya, very sort of dramatic entrance, and says, "Don't worry, you are in Vrindavan now." And then they see that it's not just Dwarika, but they're in Vrindavan together.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on. It's not so simple.
That's right. That's right. And then you can sort of see how Jiva Goswami carries on with that in the Gopal Champu. Yeah? It's the same underlying theme. There's these pastimes going on in Vrindavan, but in the end it's Radha and Krishna looking at their own pastimes. Radha and Krishna are hearing these things and looking at their own pastimes, and while they are eternally married. Yeah? So so many depths and dimensions. It's just incredible. And these acharyas are just amazing. And giants, spiritual giants. Their vision, it's just wonderful. Yes. So we have an ocean of wealth, and really we only see the tip of the iceberg. And that's already so much. That's already enough to take us back to Godhead. But there's so much more to relish at the same time. All right, I will end. I thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam.